Look at my life now. This is all a byproduct of making the right decisions moment to moment and trusting in that voice within me, that voice of reason, that authentic voice of God, right? And leaning in to that path with faith and courage every day, no matter how scary it may seem, despite the fact that I can't fully see the outcome yet, right? I trust and believe in that voice, and that's why I'm here today. What is your blueprint for success? Like, everybody wants to know, what's the path? What steps do I take? You know, they want certainty. They want this perfect path to follow that's going to lead them to achieving their goals. But the truth is, there's no perfect path, right? Success leaves clues, and you can observe people in your industry. You can hire mentors. You can join mastermind groups. But there's one thing that nobody could teach you, and one thing that's going to be the catalyst for change and growth in your life like nothing else. And that's your own conscience. And that calling in your heart that that is calling you to become a certain caliber individual. Here's the thing, you guys. I'm 12 years in the making. I started off changing my life in a jail cell 12 years ago when I was facing life in prison at 23 years old. And I had no mentors at the time. I had nobody telling me, Sean, do this, Sean, do that. It was just a feeling inside of me about who I wanted to be and the changes I needed to make. And for so many years of my life, I ignored that truth. I neglected doing the work required to become the person I wanted to be, and because of that I suffered and I struggled immensely. And I chose a different path in life because of that, right? I chose the easier path. I chose the path that other people were following. I chose comfort. I chose, vices and doing things that brought me momentary pleasure but didn't serve a greater purpose in my life. And I know so many of you right now watching this don't have the results you want. You don't have the relationships you want, you don't have the money you want, you don't have the body you want. Like, you don't have a lot of things in your life that you ideally want. And it's because you're making decisions every single day that move you away from that ideal self that you want to become. Here's the thing, you all have this calling in your heart of who you want to be and the changes you need to make and the life that you aspire to live. But you don't make the decisions that move you towards that life. And the more time that transpires, the more time that passes, the harder it is for you to change. The more difficult or impossible it feels for you to create that life. Man, I am literally a byproduct of just choosing to listen to that feeling within me and trusting and believing that somehow, some way it was going to lead me to a better life. I chose to trust in that calling in my heart, my conscience, when I was facing life in prison, when all the adversity and everything was stacked up against me. I chose to believe that somehow, some way, if I followed that path, life would get better for me. Because here's the thing, I knew firsthand what choosing that other route would lead to. It led to immense regret. It led to me being miserable in my life, me being addicted to drugs and alcohol, me having toxic relationships. Like, all of my results were inferior to who I wanted to be because I made decisions over and over and over that led me to being that person. So a prime example of what I'm trying to share with you guys is just this last weekend. I was in Austin, Texas at a speaking engagement. Marcus Luttrell was speaking, Tim Grover. It was hosted by Victor Rancour. And I have my typical keynote, something that I've put together, that I've delivered on many stages, that tells my story and helps me to deliver a captivating and inspiring message to my audience. And I was sitting in the audience listening to Marcus Luttrell the day before I was set to give my keynote. I was listening to him address the audience, and he was speaking to everyone like we were one person. And he had this wisdom and this depth about him. If you don't know who Marcus Luttrell is, they wrote the book Lone Survivor and created the movie Lone Survivor about him. Mark Wahlberg played him in the movie. Now, he's a Navy SEAL who was caught behind enemy lines and had to fight the Taliban. He almost died. All the other Navy SEALs that were with him in that battle died, and he survived. And now he's a symbol of freedom, of grit, of determination, like of everything that all men in America want to become. So I was listening to him speak, and I couldn't help but just feel this emotion, this passion, this depth inside of me start to stir. And I heard this voice, right? This voice spoke to me, and it said, tomorrow when you speak, don't make it about you, Sean. Make it about everyone else in the audience. And in that moment, I was like, damn, okay. Here's the thing. I knew that voice was the truth. That was the voice that was calling me to do something great in my life in that moment. How many of you have that moment of clarity where you have that voice inside of you calling you to take action or do something, but you ignore it? You see, that was me for my entire life. When I was an adolescent, I wanted to be this exceptional individual. I wanted to be a star athlete. I wanted to be a popular and outgoing guy at school, but I was insecure and I let fear and doubt kill my potential. I sided with fear and doubt every single day through action or inaction, and because of that, it led me down that dark and dreary path that ultimately sent me to prison. Now, in prison, I changed all that because I made a promise to myself that I was going to listen to that good voice, that truth inside of me about who I wanted to be. And every day I made decisions based on that calling, that voice within me, not the doubt and fear that led me to that jail cell. And it progressively changed my life. My mindset improved, I got more positive, I got more optimistic, I was working out every day, I was taking action. Despite nobody there telling me what to do, no coach, no mentor, no blueprint, I knew that that calling in my heart would lead me to a better life. And through the time that I was in prison, I got college degrees, I read dozens of books, I worked out every day and got in the best shape of my life, and I even started mentoring other inmates. And that's when I had the vision to speak on stage, to write my book. I had the vision to come out and be a worldwide coach. Like all the things that I'm doing right now in this moment came to me from an outside voice, like source, God guiding my path, showing me the way. So I know definitively in my heart that when I get that calling, when I hear that voice, and it's as clear as it was when Marcus Luttrell was speaking, that I must adhere, that that's the path that I must follow. Look at my life now. This is all a byproduct of making the right decisions moment to moment and trusting in that voice within me, that voice of reason, that authentic voice of God, right? And leaning in to that path with faith and courage every day, no matter how scary it may seem, despite the fact that I can't fully see the outcome yet, right? I trust and believe in that voice, and that's why I'm here today. And this is one of the most profound messages I could share to you, with you. If you understand this and you adhere to it and you apply it in your life, everything will change for the better. I promise you that. So, you know, as I was getting set to go on stage the next day, I had an idea about what I was going to do. And right before I stepped on stage, I started getting fear and anxiety. Like, oh man, the people in the audience, they're not going to be receptive to this. These guys, you know, they're in a different trade. They're in the blue, they're blue collar workers. They're not going to understand like what I'm talking about, what I'm trying to do here. They're not going to be receptive to it. And I was this close to talking myself out of it and going back and giving my typical keynote, right? And my typical keynote would have crushed it. I put it together and delivered it, you know, time and time again. And I always get a great response from the audience because my story is compelling. But in that moment, I knew that God was calling me to do something greater in my life. And I literally looked to my cameraman and I told him, hey, I'm just going to give my keynote, right? And then they called my name. They were giving me my introduction. And as I started walking up on the stage, I was like, nah, fuck that, man. I got to stay true to what I know is right and what's got me to this point in my life. And so as I got on stage, I started calling to the audience and asking if anyone was struggling and going through things in their lives that they needed help with. And I wanted to create a coachable moment where we could all be connected and support one another, you know, and it wasn't just about me and my story on stage, but it was about all the people in the audience who were there for inspiration, guidance, and support. And man, we had about half a dozen guys end up coming on stage and sharing about trauma they had gone through in the past they hadn't resolved, how they were battling alcoholism, how they wanted to make a positive change. And we had one man come on stage and talk about his financial struggles and how he had just paid his payroll for all his employees and he was broke and he didn't know what he was going to do to keep the business afloat. And in that moment, we were able to raise money. Everyone came together and threw in $1,000 here, $2,000 here, you know, $7,500 here. And we raised about $30,000 for this man. And he was blown away. He started crying. He's like, I can't take the money. And it was one of the most impactful experiences of my life. And I've never got more positive messages in my DMs, text messages, on social media after that speaking engagement than I have ever before, right? I think my story is amazing. I think that I have a great delivery on stage and I'm always excited to share with the audience. But the one time that I don't share my story and I'm not the center of attention, I get more positive feedback and a flood of messages more so than ever before. Why is that? Because I did the right thing. And in that moment, right, that was all about the timing that God had placed in my life and the right people being in that room and the opportunity for me to use that stage as a platform to be of service, to help all those men who were in the audience, who needed support, who needed that moment of inspiration. And really sometimes, you guys, we just need other people to create an opportunity for us to speak out loud what we're struggling with and to overcome it. And that's what we were able to do in that moment. And so my message for you is like, that's one small example of how when I make it about other people and it's not about me and I trust and believe in that calling in my heart and I'm courageous enough to go down that path and I have faith. I believe that it's going to work out despite the fact that I can't see the answers yet. I just trust and believe in that feeling within me and I do the right thing. I do the work. I make the sacrifices. I commit myself to whatever action plan's in front of me. It always works out. And it always works out better than expected or better than I could have made it myself. So for you guys, if you're struggling, I don't care if you're on step 1 or step 10, I don't care where you're at on your journey in your personal development. If you listen to that conscience within and you align your daily actions and thoughts to that man that you want to be, that person that you're being called to become, your whole world will continue to transform for the better. But if you don't, you're going to suffer, you're going to struggle, and it's going to be self-imposed. Don't do that to yourself. Side with the good, follow that path in life, and watch what happens.